Kia ora, welcome to Church Online here at MABC. It's really great to have you with us today. I'm really excited that after all this time in lockdown, today we've got a number of you gathering together as house churches in each other's homes, and so good, I'm sure, to be able to see each other after all this time of lockdown and to be able to gather and worship in this kind of way. We've got a few tweaks to what we're doing on video as well. We're trying out some new things because when we thought of, house churches watching this together, we thought, well, what would be the point, if you're gathering together in each other's homes, of watching someone worship for you on the TV when you could be worshipping together in your house church? And what would be the point of someone praying for you on the screen when you could pray together in your house church? Things like discussing the sermon together, things like sharing in communion together. These things made a whole lot of sense and are quite exciting when we started to think about the house church context and the possibilities for it. So what we're going to do in the service, a couple of points in today's service where a screen will come up and it'll say hit pause, and it'll give you some options for things you can do together. We're aware that some of you will still be watching on your own as well, and that's great, and we reckon what we provide will work well for you also. So the first of those pause moments is coming up pretty soon as we begin this service together. We thought it'd be nice to give you an opportunity to either sing together or to pray together. And so if you're praying together, a simple thing you could do is just pray prayers of thankfulness. Say in your group, thank you God for, and then fill out the sentence. One person, then another person can do the same, and so on. If you're singing, we thought, well, how can we get people singing together in their house churches? And I thought, thank goodness that in the last few years we had a tradition of teaching absolutely everyone in the church how to play the ukulele. So if you've got a ukulele in your house, you might want to go grab it in a moment, and you could sing the song that's coming on the screen with words and chords, and everyone will be able to see it there together. It's the you remember the slow chorus from "O Come All Ye Faithful." Oh, come, let us adore Him. Oh, come, and carries on like that through that, and has a couple of other choruses with different words. And so all of that will come on the screen in a moment. If you're going to sing together too, I really recommend in your groups, don't be half-hearted. We haven't been able to worship together for so long, so give it plenty. If you're going to sing, really sing and enjoy singing together and worshipping God in that way. And you can spend 30 seconds over this, or you could spend half an hour if you want. It's entirely up to you, however you want to run things at your place. All right, so all of that's going to come on the screen just a moment, and make your choice out of those couple of options. All right, moving on now to some things to let you know about that are coming up. First of all, next Sunday, two things. First of all, we're going to take communion together next week. So if you are leading a house church, if you could organise some communion elements, that would be really great. I think it's going to be really special to celebrate communion together as believers after all this time in lockdown. Also next week is the last Sunday for our youth pastor, Jess Lovett. And so a special time to recognise that. A message has really been on Jess's heart, and she's going to share that in the video that we provide next week in the form of an interview. So all of that coming up. And then the week after that, Sunday the 19th, that's the Sunday before Christmas, at 4:30 p.m, we have a really important church meeting, and at that church meeting we're going to bring to you the profiles of two potential new staff members. So one is potentially our new youth pastor, and then another one in a limited role as a new associate pastor. And so that will be 4:30 on the Sunday before Christmas. Now, we're planning to do that both gathered and online. So we found out last week, it happened while I was recording last week's video, the government changed the limit from 10 to 25 for mixed groups. So for this church meeting, we'll have two gathered groups, separate groups of 25 at the church. Or you can also watch on Zoom. So I know a number of our young people will be at Gregson Camp, and they'll be no doubt interested to know about this potential new youth pastor, and so they can sign in there from Zoom. And also any who feel they're not quite ready to come back for a gathered event yet, so we'll send out a Zoom link and you can be part of that church meeting. But one way or another, if we could all put that in our diaries, 4:30 p.m. on Sunday the 19th, really important we get good numbers for that as we figure out the way ahead together there. All right. Finally, to say, if you missed last Sunday we talked about how we are thinking to navigate our way through the traffic light levels, and we shared results of the MABC survey about it. And it's really important, I think, that everyone see that. So if you didn't see the service last week, and you're wondering where we're at on all those things, really important. Go to YouTube and just type Mount Albert Baptist Church, 28 November, and up will come last week's service. You can click on that and watch that anytime. So really encourage people to do that if you haven't just yet. We will need to move to gathered services at some point, but we want to put our energy in the first case into these groups of up to 25 and make those work really well. And we think they'll be a key component for us going forward. As we've thought about different ways of gathering at the different levels, we realised that the classic service have actually done this before. You know, having to meet in a different time, place, different way. They have learnt some things that we thought could be instructive for all of us to hear. So take a look at this interesting interview with Jackie and Janfrey Wise. So with me right now, I have Janfrey Wise, who is one of our elders. She's on the right. Janfrey, welcome.
Yes, thank you. Hi everyone.
And on the left, we have her sister, Jackie Wise, and Jackie was doing a reading in a service a couple of weeks ago. So hi, Jackie, great to have you with us as well. And so both Janfrey and Jackie are in leadership in the classic service. And so Janfrey will know, as we talked about it in elders, we talked through lots of options for services, for mixed groups or vaccinated groups for each of the levels, and it kind of did our heads in, didn't it?
Yes, sure.
It was a big challenge. It's really tough for churches to figure this out. But when we thought about the classic service, we realised that a meeting in a different place doesn't mean that we have to divide it all. It doesn't have to be divisive. Can you tell us what's it like in the classic service, and do you feel part of MABC?
Most of us do still feel really part of the wider church because we're still linked by technology to the other service. And also, from time to time, people will come from the other service and join us if they're needing a quieter, more reflective time. Sometimes if they're feeling a little down or they're feeling stressed. And we love that. We're a pretty welcoming group. And someone once said, if you want to feel loved, come to the classic service, because everyone's always so pleased to see the others.
And we're not split off from the other people in the church. Like as individuals, we still make contact with them through the week and between services. Mm-hmm. And it just made me think of Apostle Paul's illustration of the church as a body and how you don't often get your chin down to your toes, but they are still parts of the same body and still valued and loved and belong.
Yeah. Yeah. And so while you're doing something different at the same time, you still feel a part of MABC as much as anyone else, right? And so if someone were to ask either of you, what's your church? I mean, there's only going to be one answer to that question, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, we would all answer the same.
Yes.
Yeah. And so in doing this classic service concurrently with our 11 o'clock service, have you found there are some advantages in doing church the way that you do?
Yes, we have. We find it's really lovely to worship together as a smaller group because it feels like family and we really get to know each other well. We really care about each other, like not just one or two of the people, but all of the people. And if somebody new comes, we know they're new and we can welcome them. Whereas that's sometimes easier and harder in a big group.
Yeah.
And also, anyone who wants to can be an active participant. doing readings or prayers or making comments or sharing ideas, and that's much easier in a small group.
Yes, very much. There's a real sense of freedom to worship in your own way in a smaller group, but at the same time be connected to the whole body. And we were thinking that something that has been difficult in the classic service is timing everything so that we're exactly ready to switch over and listen to something else when it starts, not miss the beginning of the message or something like that. But there won't be an issue in our homes, because we can stop the online video or start watching it later to fit in the things which we need to do, like welcome people or singing or extra praying or something like that. It'll be really special.
So the options for mixed groups presently are for up to 25, and so we can do house churches and things like that. And then under orange level, we can have up to 50, and under green level, up to 100. So this is a whole new journey for us to figure this out. Having been on a journey like it with the classic service, what would your message be to those setting out in it now?
Well, first of all, you might find it feels a little strange at first. Maybe not so much if you've been in a life group, but if you haven't been, it might do. It took us a little while to adjust, but we were utterly committed to making it work. So stick with it. Commit to finding the ways that make it work for you. Put your own creativity to work. And you'll probably be surprised by the unexpected blessings you find. We really found God blessed us in ways we hadn't anticipated.
Yes, absolutely.
So she's covered it all, Jackie?
She has covered the lot.
That's a really, really helpful list. Lots for us to think about there. Thank you so much, Jamfrey and Jackie, for joining us today. Thanks for your thoughts on that.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for inviting us, Steve. Good.
Bye.
That was really a light bulb moment for us at Elders, as we thought about all the iterations of how we might need to meet with this group and that group, and this at red and that at orange and that at green, and it was all a big headache. And then we realised that the classic service has shown us already that meeting in a different time and place doesn't have to divide us at all. We're all MABCers. And so thank you for that interview, Jamfrey and Jackie, and to hear your experience of that. That was really instructive and actually shows there's real possibilities when we start meeting in different ways. So that's exciting. If you're not currently in a house church and you would like to be in one, just email myself or Pastor Judy, and we'd love to help you find your place with that. But as staff, we are committed to finding the best ways we can for different groups to meet at red or orange or green as we go through that. All right, we're coming now to our sermon time. So first of all, here is Hannah Moy, who is going to read a Bible reading relating to that. Thanks, Hannah.
The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon me, for the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to comfort the brokenhearted and to proclaim that captives will be released and prisoners will be freed. He has sent me to tell those who mourn that the time of the Lord's favour has come, and with it the day of God's anger against their enemies. To all who mourn in Israel, he will give a crown of beauty for ashes, a joyous blessing instead of mourning, festive praise instead of despair. In their righteousness they will be like great oaks that the Lord has planted for his own glory.
I reckon Christmas matters more this year than it ever has. Things get in the way of us seeing the big picture. Things like tinsel and mistletoe. Things like specials at St. Luke's. Things like family and holiday preparation. Things like traffic light regulations. But if you want to get the big picture of Christmas, then ask the biggest question. Why did God send Jesus to earth to start with? Well, actually, there are a few answers to that question. And there are a number of different theological answers to that question. But do you want to know what Jesus' answer was? And why he felt he was put here on earth and what he felt his mission was. Actually, you've already heard the answer to that. It was in that reading you heard just a moment ago from Hannah Moy from the book of Isaiah. Jesus came for the poor, for the broken-hearted, to bring freedom for captives, release for prisoners, to announce the Lord's favour is coming. And God's vengeance is also coming towards those who oppress the poor and the broken-hearted and all those other things. Jesus came so people would know beauty instead of ashes, an oil of gladness, a garment of praise for those in despair. Jesus came so that God's glory and splendour would be seen in people. Now, when the prophet Isaiah wrote those words, it was way back at one of the darkest periods in the life of the history of the people of Israel. They were captives in Babylon, a long way away from Israel, a long way away from their home, their culture, everything that was important to them, including their way of doing worship. And here in this strange place, this strange culture, the prophet Isaiah brings them words of hope, and he says, all that is wrong in this world and all the brokenness and the oppression, it's all going to be sorted out. And it's going to be a little bit like, a valley being raised up, so the poor and the broken and all those who have lost stuff like you guys and all of that, it's going to be restored, and it's going to be like a valley raised up. And those who oppress and hurt others, people like us, he said, that's going to be like mountains being lowered. And all of this is going to come because God's going to come, and he said it's going to come in the form of a person, the Messiah. And centuries later, Jesus walks in to a synagogue in Nazareth, and he reads that passage from the scroll of Isaiah, and at the end of it he rolls it up and he said, and I am that one. This is me. This is why I came. These are the things I'm going to do. I am here for the poor and the broken and the lost and all of that. And later on, when John the Baptist wants to check that he really is the one, and he sends two of his disciples to go and see Jesus and say, are you really the one, or should we expect another? And Jesus looks at those disciples and he said, well, we'll take a look at what's going on here. He said, the blind see, the lame walk, those with leprosy are cured, the deaf hear, the dead are raised to life, and the good news is being preached to the poor. Take a look at what's going on. Jesus said, this is me. I am the one. This is the reason I was sent here. And as if we needed it one more time, then Jesus' words at the final judgment say, I was hungry and you fed me, thirsty and you gave me a drink, a stranger and you welcomed me, sick and you looked after me. So the start and the middle and the end of Jesus' ministry, they all say this same thing, that Jesus came, he was sent here by God for the needy. So nothing makes more sense at Christmas time than to look out into our community and think, what are the needs we see, and how can we as Christians help with some of those needs? I reckon Mount Albert Baptist Church has done loads of really good outreach over the last couple of decades. And as I stop and think about all the different ways we've gone about serving the needs in our local community, honestly, I feel proud to have been able to play a little part in that, of all that's been done in the last couple of decades, and to think, this is a church that has done outreach pretty well. I guess you're also aware of how much outreach we can't do when we're in lockdown. And in the last while, the big preoccupation for MABC folk, of course, has been who's allowed to worship with who, and when, and how, and at what level, and all of that kind of stuff. And it's like this massive preoccupation with ourselves and how we do our stuff, And almost I can imagine A little like the people in Israel in Babylon, no longer able to worship in the way that they would like to and in the place they would like to, and that really bothered them. And then along comes Isaiah with a big picture again, and I wonder if we also, instead of this preoccupation with us and what we're about really at now and all our headaches, whether we need to hear a bit of that big picture from Isaiah as well. Now this Christmas, we're not going to be able to gather in the way we want and do our big services and invite our friends and that kind of stuff and have lots of variety and fun. And we're not going to be able to do that in the normal way this year, unfortunately. And so we started thinking, well, what could we do and what should we do? And we thought, what if instead of that, in our house churches, in our groups of up to 25, we could start dreaming and asking the question, how could we bless our local community? What are lots of different ways that we could care for and bless and help some of the needs in our local community? Because honestly, after this long lockdown, there are a lot of hurts and a lot of needs and a lot of broken people in our community. What if we could dream up ways of helping that this Christmas time, and what if in groups or as individuals we could go about meeting a whole lot of those needs? Don't you think instead of all gathering inside closed doors for a big celebration that's largely for us, what if in our groups we thought of all the different ways that we could reach out to society? Wouldn't that just be the best Christmas ever? Now, this pandemic that we're in, you may or may not know that the world has seen a number of pandemics before. And so often in pandemics, it was the Christians who would show up to help, who would go towards people's pain and suffering rather than scurry away and hide from it. There are lots of examples of this happening, and I want to share just one with you. It's from 165 AD, so just over 100 years after Jesus walked the earth. In 165 AD, there was a plague, and it was so destructive that it was killing 2,000 people a day just in the city of Rome. Now, this pandemic, this plague, it swept through the Roman world, and it lasted for more than 2 decades. So we kind of hope that COVID-19 will be over this year. Well, this one lasted for more than 2 decades. Can you imagine that? History records how the norm in those days was that people, quote, pushed the sufferers away and fled from their dearest, throwing them into the roads before they were dead and treating unburied corpses as dirt, hoping thereby to avert the spread and contagion of the fatal disease. So people generally were just so afraid of getting the plague that they would treat even people they loved with contempt and keep away from them and not help them at all. On the other hand, the Christians, writes Bishop Dionysius of the church in Alexandria, and in the city of Alexandria, 2/3 of the population had died. But he said, most of our brother Christians showed unbounded love and loyalty, never sparing themselves and thinking only of one another. He said, heedless of danger, the Christians took charge of the sick, attending to their every need and ministering to them in Christ, and with them they departed this life serenely happy. For they, the Christians, were infected by others with the disease, drawing on themselves the sickness of their neighbours and cheerfully accepting their pains. So in going to serve those who were sick, a lot of the Christians got sick and some of them died too, but they accepted that in the name of Jesus, in the name of the suffering that Jesus himself went through and that they felt called to. My goodness, didn't those Christians show up in that pandemic? And it's not just Christian historians who wrote about that. Nearly a century later, Emperor Julian, looking to bolster his form of religion, he urged a high priest in Galatia, he said, you've got to emulate what the Christians are doing. Because the Christians, you see how much they have grown in number because of their benevolence towards strangers and their care for the graves of the dead, and how they support not only their own poor, but ours as well. Christians were the ones who walked towards the pain of other people, not away from it. And it makes me want to ask, how can we care for the needy of our community this Christmas? Wouldn't it be the best celebration of Christmas ever if we could come up with, in our groups of 25 or of families or as individuals, lots of ways that we could care for our community this Christmas time? Wouldn't that be great? On the screen that's about to come up in a moment, and when it does, if you would hit pause and spend a moment discussing the question on it. We've come up with a few initial ideas of ways that we could, as individuals or groups, serve our community this Christmas time. You and your groups, you might come up with much better ideas than these. And that's the creativity of it. So spend a moment, chat with the people you are watching with, and see what ideas you can come up with. And then once you've done that, if you could spend a moment praying together, and then that will be the end of our service. Thanks so much.